One thing I really wish I would have done is talk to her more about death. When Laura passed, I loved the pain because it made me feel close to her, but I felt like it also made me build walls around myself. The next person that I meet, they're not going to get the inside jokes. They're not going to smell like her. I'm going to have to relearn and unlearn. It is a minefield.
That's a difficult part because unlearning is removing everything that you've pretty much based your life on for so long. And it's scary because it's starting over. That hole is always going to exist.
It's always there.
But it's digging a new hole in many ways and creating another chapter. What's up, y'all? This is Dead Talks. Thank you so much for being here. My name is David Ferrugio. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you like the idea behind this show, hit that like button. If you are watching this episode, it really helps get the show out there. Short and sweet, baby. Let's get into it. Michael, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. For those of you that are listening, this has been I think you said it's been a year or two at least of trying to make this happen, and we're just trying to coordinate schedules, trying to do it in person. So we're settling for digital until the time comes where we can actually meet face to face. But
yeah,
before we hear from you, and less from me, as the audience is probably begging for, I mentioned to you pre-recording that I want the audience to hear that it means a lot when a man comes on the show, and it means no disrespect at all. I love all the women that come on the show, but I have noticed statistically, most of my audience are women, and I think that is a little bit of a tell, not an entire tell, about men being expressive about this topic of grief and loss, which you've experienced and you'll get into. So again, as a man, both of us, it means a lot for you to express this, and I hope it will tap into other men, maybe being a little more willing to not do it on camera per se, but just being a little expressive to the people in their life that I think can help them on their journey. So Again, thank you for showing up here today. And wherever the story starts, wherever you're called, I would love to tap into your experience of what happened with your spouse and everything else that came from that. Like, tell me about the beginning, if you will, of when everything took a turn.
Yeah, and also before I start, thank you for what you're doing too. This is obviously a love fest because I too appreciate when guys talk about this. We're not trained this way, but life kind of forces us into learning certain skills that don't come natural, but we can learn and we should. So I appreciate all that you're putting out in the world. So my story, it's like many people who are widowed, and probably many of your listeners who experience grief. Everything was great until it wasn't. And in 2016, we got pregnant, brought James into the world. 7 months later, while James was breastfeeding, he noticed a lump on Laura's breast. And so that kind of spiraled into this whole breast cancer journey where we had positive news, we had negative news, we had remission, we went on trips, we did all of these things. And then just on one routine scan in 2018, it spread to her liver. And the doctor, I was in the room, and it's funny because it's been 6 years, but certain things just stay with you. And I remember being next to Laura and looking at the doctor, and he was giving us news that we had a chance, but you could see in his eyes that he just didn't. And I remember feeling so split that day because I wanted to mourn with her because she was sad, but also as a caregiver, I had to give her hope. I never felt like, I never felt like it was my space to add any weight to her. And so as a guy, I just kind of grinned and bared it. And sadly, she passed away in 2019. And, the hardest days aren't the days they pass away. It's the following years, and sometimes it's year 1, sometimes it's year 5. Grief is strange that way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important point in regards to the timing of it all, because it kind of hits you out of nowhere when you think you're dealing with it, when you may feel like this or that, and like you said, year 1, year 5, all of a sudden things kind of just like pop up out of nowhere. And I want to tap into the aftermath of kind of how your process is. But before we do that, I would love to tap into, I guess, from that moment where she got the diagnosis and you started seeing how the doctor was seeing things and trying to stay hopeful. Did you have any dialogue with her in regards to leading up to the point where she did pass away? And how did that go? Like, what was her mentality, and what were the conversations you had, especially with the child in this world? How did you guys approach it? I know you didn't want to add weight to her, so maybe you didn't talk about it. But what was the dialogue like with you and your wife?
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest regrets I had, and I actually didn't have too many. Like, we spoke about literally everything, but death was not one of them. And I always wish I would have had those conversations with her to understand where she was at. And it's not as though I didn't create space for it. I was just always the one that was trying to create hope. And I don't feel necessarily bad for that, but I feel like I missed an opportunity to learn from her about her mental state and what she believed was going to happen throughout the whole thing. So one thing I really wish I would have done is talk to her more about death. I felt like it was my role, just taking care of my 7-month-old son, and also her, that it was just about providing hope, like getting to the next thing. You know, doctors always will give you a next thing, whether or not it's nutrition or scans or another possible trial that's right around the bend. And if you can hold off long enough, that's the hope you hold on to. And so that was what I did. And one of the most amazing things, David, was after she passed, and this was just brought me to my knees. As I'm sitting in the house that we both built, had a kid together, everything, I started to clean out her stuff, and she hid letters for me. Like, she knew she was passing away. And I have one right back here. Wherever it is. It actually says don't open until like January 23rd, 2029. So in 4 years, 10 years after she passed, she hid letters for James to open on his wedding day, on the day he gets married, like the day he graduates college, all of these things. And if you can see these flowers behind me,
Mm-hmm.
um, what was it, maybe 4 months after she passed away, I get a ring from on the doorbell. I go pick them up. These flowers are there. She sent me flowers on Father's Day, 4 months or 5 months after she passed away. And so, you know, I was receiving those things and looking at those letters for the longest time. It's like they haunted me because I wanted to open them. I wanted to feel closer to her. But then as time went on, it just reminded me of her spirit, and how wonderful she was and how much she lives in our son, how much she cares for us. And it was just such a beautiful gesture.
Man, I literally got the chills as soon as you explained that story. There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there, and I want to go backwards and end up where you just ended. But it is contradicting when I did ask you, what the conversations were like leading up to it, and there's a weird balance. Like, it's one of those things. Like, what do you do first of all? So there's like no wrong
Right.
path for the most part. You know what I mean? And when you're
Right.
trying to be hopeful by bringing up the conversation, or you opening that door of negativity and pessimism because you think things aren't going to work out. So there's nothing wrong with the hopeful path, but I do understand that battle of wishing to do this, because I feel like no matter what you would have decided to do, there always would have been a what if. I wish I could have done that. I think that's just the nature of life. But then
Yeah.
to have these letters, it also brings up on the fly just these thoughts of, I brought up recently through talking to someone about redefining pain. And even when I was
Yeah.
saying it, I was like, I don't even know what the hell I'm saying, but I think I know what I'm saying. And it kind of correlates to what I think you're saying, where you have these letters and it kind of makes you feel weird. I don't know, maybe pain isn't the right word, but kind of. And then all of a sudden you were able to transmute that definition and perspective of it into something beautiful. And I think that is such a healthy, difficult practice to conceptualize, but you did it. And I think that's such a powerful way of looking at how something could be, inherently painful, but you made a seem like a conscious choice through maybe contemplation, whatever your practice was. And I would love for you to tap into that, to turn it into something in a totally different perspective. And my whole point is the power of that perspective is a choice, but it's not just like a light switch. So what was that process for you to look at these letters as initially something maybe painful, and correct me if I'm wrong if that's not the right word, to something
No, it
where
is.
to find something like the beauty behind it, where it reminds of her spirit, like you said.
Well, I think it define like it's so symbolic of what the journey is for grief. In the beginning, you hold on to the pain because the pain makes you feel close. And even though it hurts, you still feel close. And when people say time heals, I'm not a believer in that if you're doing nothing at all. Because the easiest thing to do is sit there with your pain for the rest of your life. The hard part is getting off the couch and trying to make sense of a world uh, without them in your life. And so as far as the pain is goes, I would say when Laura passed, I loved the pain because it made me feel close to her, but I felt like it also made me build walls around myself. I isolated myself just to myself and James, and it didn't help either that it was right around COVID too. So COVID hit about a year after she passed. So there goes support system. There goes everything. Felt like truly alone, but I had my pain, and the pain was a companion too. At some point, it's like that's not a way to live. And I looked at my son, and it's like you need to have a happy father, and so it's like you have to continue to go forward with your life and some sort of normalcy. And as difficult as that is, it is a choice, and it's not betrayal, and it's not guilt. It's what they would have wanted. And I know people say that stuff all the time. And regardless if you're a person of faith or not, I'm a spiritual person and believe I'll meet Laura again. And so the one thing that really motivated me was that if we're going to meet again and I see her and she looks at me and she says, did you not see how hard I fought for life? What did you do? Just sit on the couch wallowing in your sadness this entire time? Did you not learn anything? It's like, no, I want to have stories for her. I want to show her how life fell apart after she left. And I want to tell her stories about how challenging it was, but that I kept fighting because she taught me how to love. And if you have it once, then of course you're going to want it again, because it's a beautiful thing. And so I think that was just a thought that ran through my mind constantly when I was trying to figure out how to put my life back together again after she left.
Yeah, and what you said is something that I even like mentioned today. That what you specifically said, pain as a companion, and it is interesting
Yeah.
because that pain is comforting. We often can complain about it. We know we don't want to be here. We wish this, that, and the other, but that pain is comforting. And you hit the nail on the head that the hard part isn't the pain as much as we feel like it is. The hard part is truly trying to grow from that pain and find some sort of
Yeah.
happiness again. Really, because that just sitting, if you're just sitting there doing nothing, which I understand I think that's a natural process, of course, too. I'm not digging that, but at the same time, to make some sort of movement takes energy, it takes effort, it takes a fight, it
Yes,
takes a battle, and
it does.
that's the hard part. Even though we think
That's
the
the
pain,
hard
even though we think the pain is the hard part, it's very hard, yes. But the true hard part is to find growth within that and redefine that pain however you had to do it, however anyone has to do it. So it's a great acknowledgement there. And even something I said today, I don't even know where it came from, but I said something along the lines of, let's not create two deaths, in a sense that when someone passes, it often feels like we died with them, which I get, but
Yeah.
why create two deaths from that? And parlaying with what you said in regards to, with that loved one that you want that. As cliche as that sounds, and as many times as people say that, that's a real contemplation, let alone you having a son that needs a happy father. That is so profound. And
Yep.
that is the complicated part of grief in your situation and many other people's situation, is raising a child while looking after yourself. And there's a delicate balance of doing that because you need to take care of yourself to raise a child, as you just mentioned. So what is that process? And first off, explaining that to your son about what just happened with his mother.
James was 2 when she passed away, and so he really didn't understand too much about it. And I remember when she passed, it was kind of along the lines of the two deaths part that you were just talking about. I remember at one point, I can't pinpoint how long it was after she died, but I was like, I'm tired of waking up every day on the defensive about what grief is going to tell me to do and just give up on the day and make that decision the second I open my eyes in bed. And so I made this decision to, not make that decision until after I took a shower, sat down, and really thought about it. Because eventually I got to this point where I'm like, grief can't take more than it already has. Cancer can't take more than it already has. And it was this mental switch that I had where it almost felt like I started going on the offensive. Anytime I started to feel that heavy grief, I would make space for it, but I also wouldn't let it determine what I was going to do that day because I have a son and he deserves to have a happy life. He can't have a dad that is just completely wrecked by what he had just gone through. And Laura and I were together for 15 years. We met when we were 18. I spent half my life with her. And so she formed me in so many ways. So it's like having James there, as difficult as it was and as scary as it was to raise him, in many ways he saved me because I could have gone down the path of self-destruction and things like that, but it was just trying to be a good father and give him a chance at life that really motivated me to do some work.
Man, you're sounding like my mother in many ways. I remember when I had her on the podcast. I mean that in the best way possible. You're not a woman, but
No, as a
yeah.
single parent, you play both roles, man. It's like rub some dirt on it. Oh, do you have a boo boo? You want me to kiss it? Yeah, we do. We do both of them.
Well, I mean, I remind my mother in a sense. I remember when I had her on the podcast, I brought up something about me not feeling like I was strong enough for a support system for my family, and then she says she flipped it, of course, in a loving mother way. But without going through the details, she said something along the lines of, "No, you were a support system for me because without you, I don't know
Yeah,
what I would have done." And even though that wasn't really for me, it was just my existence. It was leveraging in the kids because she had to be what you explained in order to raise her child because
purpose.
you can raise a kid and be miserable and we think we're just going through the motions. I don't know nothing about that. I can't speak from experience, but from some uneducated understanding, it's like, no, your mood, the way you act, the way you move through life isn't just about raising a kid logistically. It's like your emotions, whether you express it or not, carry a weight on the way that child's risen. And it's such an intricate part about how you handle the grief. And yeah, it's what you said. Like your child probably did save your life in many ways. And he's gonna
In
know.
many ways.
Yeah, in many ways, and he's how old is this? He was 2, so he's like, is he like
He's,
eight? Eight?
yeah, he's 9 now.
He's 9 now. So how has that evolved? And now that he's getting older, now he's still a child, but at the same time, I'm sure he's grasping the world more vividly now. So what is the conversation like now and understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I've always tried to go with my gut and not overly educate myself, but have conversations like the one we're having with people that have been there, uh, in order to know how best to approach James. And so one thing I started thinking about was, man, I want him to remember his mom. Like he needs to know this woman, and where he came from. And then the other part was, well, he was 2. And I don't want to show him all these photos and be like, remember, remember, and make him feel any sort of guilt if he doesn't. So what I started doing was really weaving in stories when there was something that he did that reminded me of her to build that connection. So it wasn't forced. It wasn't like, hey, sit down and watch our wedding video because that's what I want to do, you know? But he doesn't remember any of that. And there'll be a time when he gets older where we're going to do that. But it needs to, for me, it always felt like delivering it to him in a very natural way so that death didn't feel forced and this taboo thing. So it's like, well, I mean, what that looks like is, hey, I want to talk about your mom and death. Well, maybe he doesn't.
Mm.
So start the conversation about something beautiful, about why his laugh is proof that nature beats nurture any day of the week. And, let him know how much, when he does good at school, how much of a book nerd his mom was and how much of a degenerate I was. And so it's like, thank God you got the best sides. And for me, that approach has helped because it's healthier. It's led to a lot more questions, and it's also on his time too.
I mean, that's profound. I think that balance of instead of forcing and going with the natural route is often the answer, and it's just trusting ourselves. And
You have to
I
know
love that
you have to know
approach.
your kid. You have to know your kid. Like it's so good parenting. I mean, I'm not saying I figured it out, but I know him. I know what he's not telling me. I know when there's something on his mind. I know when he's happy with himself, struggling, everything in between. And it's because you spend a lot of time with them. And you get to know their thoughts. So I mean, if anybody's listening to this wondering, what's the playbook on how to best tackle grief, my only advice would be know your kid. Know your kid really, really well and create that open dialogue, whether or not it's with death or everything else, that they can come to you without judgment, and feel safe when they have questions and are confused.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's knowing yourself too, because we can't forget the balance of what you said earlier in regards to you, your son, your child needs a happy dad. So, as much as the focus goes and priority goes on your child, there has to be some sort of priority on yourself, and also
Yeah.
releasing the guilt on taking care of yourself when you got to take care of your child, because taking care of yourself is taking care of your child. So, how did you not forget yourself? Because I know I put a mental note on you saying you kind of made a decision in the morning before the shower,
Yeah.
after the shower. So what was that process of balancing raising a kid, but also taking time for yourself?
Yeah, with your permission, and I will totally regret if I don't ask you. James, I don't know what it's like to lose a child. James doesn't know what it's like to lose a wife. You lost a parent. Give me advice on what you saw as a kid with how people handled the passing of your father, and what you wish would have been different.
Yeah, the wishing what would have been different is a convoluted statement, but I know what you're getting at. It's more what I don't remember that frustrates me, and I feel like I can't get inside your child's head, and time will tell. But for
Yeah.
me personally, it's a lot of the forgetfulness, and it's partially the memory of my father, which I love your approach. I think that's going to have incredible long term benefits of kind of not kind of creating the memory, because he won't have any, but through your storytelling and natural sharing, I think that's going to come back tenfold for the rest of his life. But one thing that I kind of not wish I did or wish was taking place around me, but partially I wish I knew how I felt. Like I wish I remember at 12-year-old
How
David.
old were you?
I was 12.
12?
Yeah, I
Okay.
was 12, so older and enough to remember. That's the crazy part is where
Yeah.
it's still 25 years ago, but I think the traumatic, shocking event did a number on me. Or I've said this a million times, where I just smoked too much weed growing up. Who knows? But
Yeah.
maybe
The
maybe,
Jung
maybe
program.
trauma and weed. Who knows? But it's
Yeah.
it's more like I feel like I might have saw this embodying the style of something along the lines of this great charity Comfort Zone that talks about that has it's a childhood grief camp essentially. You may know about it, and I don't know if I saw it from them or something I naturally thought of, but regardless, it was kind of like a time capsule. Like I kind of would have loved to have journaled, or whether through however a child might do it, through artwork, through like some kind of audio recording. I don't want to like force a mic in the child's face, but whatever feels natural, kind of what you're saying, and kind of have some sort of record of
An
okay,
outlet.
yeah, like an outlet too. That's arguably the best part, but also then something that maybe the parents can save down the line. So when they're 25 as a man, being like thinking about your father, and that's the next chapter of grief, which was for me like a lot of my processing was becoming a man, and even at 30, even at 36, like I'm thinking of grief differently. I'm thinking of how I was, and the forgetful nature for me is frustrating. So I was like, it would have been cool to have some kind of, yes, outlet, but also some record of, I could look back at what I wrote when I was 13, 14, 15 in a journal, or again, artwork, wherever it may have been, to be like, oh, that's what was going through my mind. Not so
I love
much,
that.
not so much to go back to it, but kind of, yeah, just to be like, also a check mark for how I feel now. Maybe a deeper understanding of maybe why I feel like this is because I felt like that then. So, a lot of things we go through as a kid creates the rest of our life. So I'm not sure this is advice, but it's just a thought. Is there a way to kind of like document, and yes, more importantly, an outlet, like we said, but to document maybe how he feels at 8, how he feels at 10, 12, and then maybe not, but maybe it'll be useful down the line. So if he has questions as a man, like I have now, and it's very specific to my personal experience, so, it might not relate, but then he could be like, oh, I have this, what you wrote when you were 12, could be a few words, or
Right.
you drew this, and it's like, oh, damn, that's how I felt, because maybe he will remember at 12 how exactly I felt, but maybe he won't. So it's kind of, again, a twofold of the outlet process of expression, and also a record of the past that he could kind of look back towards that may help him in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think documenting it's so important. It almost creates a benchmark, and I think it's always good looking backward and reading things that you wrote and getting back into a younger version of your head, because it really shows you that we've been through a lot of these things before. They look a lot different. Like there's nothing scarier than being, an 18-year-old. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you'll become. You don't know where you're going to live. You're influenced by literally everybody. You got all these expectations about, how much life's going to cost and where you're going to go, and you haven't proven anything yet. And it's kind of that lostness and that self-questioning that I feel like happens very much in grief. And so it's like tapping back into that and being like, there was a time when I didn't even know who I was, what I was going to become, what I was going to look like, where I was going to live, what I was going to do. Would I have a child? Would I get married? All of these questions. Um, those are the same questions that started happening after I lost Laura, because I was a different person, and life change, like grief changes you so dramatically. And I feel like that offends some people that are around you when they want you to return back to a version of yourself that is no longer there. They want you to move on fast, but not too fast. Some want you to move on slow because they're projecting what it would feel like if they were the ones passed, and what their husband or wife would do. Would they start dating within a year? Would they, try not to honor them through everything? And that judgment is so incredibly toxic on people that are grieving. And I always found it so amazing how much widowers get judged.
Mm-hmm.
It's like death is going to come for us all, and unless you have actually experienced it yourself, you're not allowed to judge. You're just not allowed to, because you're applying these rules that exist in the normal world in a world that is completely flipped upside down, where those rules don't exist.
100%. I'd even up your ante and say, even people that have gone through it, I don't think anyone should judge, in a sense, because everyone's experience is so
Correct.
different. So one person might
So different.
might be
Well
not
said.
might not be dating in 5 years because they're hanging out, think it's disrespectful, and that same person who lost a wife might look at you and you dated a year later and judge you. So it's, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't please everybody. So at the same time, I think I think we go back to what your one of your core lessons was trusting the natural process, and whatever that natural
Yes.
process is likened to you, and trusting that. And in regards to the people the shoulds and these paradigms that we've been told based on books and people's experiences. Let that go. Use it. You can use it as a blueprint, but also create your own recipe behind it in a sense. And it's like I kind of compare it to a cocoon. It's like people might have known you as a caterpillar and want you to return back to a caterpillar, and now you're a butterfly in many sense, but they don't like the butterfly as much as the cat. But no, and some people grow out of your life because of that, and that's the natural process too, unfortunately or fortunately.
That's the natural process,
So it's
and
like,
and you have to be okay with it.
yeah, we all have, and both sides have to be okay with it. And the other person isn't, then that's their journey. You can only do so much, and it's just this shit with grief. And when you lose someone, even though it's expected, just not expected when it happens a lot sooner than you may have expected it. You're entering another dimension. Like someone on the podcast asked me, like, do you feel like you lived two lives? I'm like, well, I feel like I've lived 20 different lives, but yeah.
Oh man.
Once 12 years old happened in that September, I was like, oh no, I'm literally morphing into a totally different dimension, a totally different life path. Like, I don't know if I would have moved to California. I don't know if I probably would have worked in this city. I wouldn't have this podcast, all these things we could list off. And that's the tough adjustment because, yeah, you're not the same person you used to be, but I still believe underneath that you are foundationally. It's just you can get back to the old you in some capacity, but you're still not the old you. So it's not just like completely shedding who you were completely, but kind of in a way. There's still like that core. You can still go back to that core you in many ways if you want to, but it is a completely new you at the same time. So it's kind of contradicting.
Yeah, I remember. I love what you said about the advice for James, and I'm totally gonna implement that too. And what you just said just now is hitting me. And I think there's a lot to be learned from the grieving process. I remember just searching so hard to try to find the silver linings behind it. Here's a crazy story. So this was about a year after Laura passed, and I come home after a Boys and Girls Club event. Laura was being honored for an award. She did a lot of stuff with Boys and Girls Club. And I come home and I find my mother-in-law crying on the couch. And I sit next to her and she tells me the story, and it changed everything for me. In short, when Laura was 12, she had anorexia, and it was so, so bad that by the time she got to 13, she was hospitalized, and they brought in priests for, final or last rites. They thought she was going to pass away in Detroit. And Laura's mom went into the bathroom, and she was crying and pleading with God to get that she would do anything for if God would give her 20 more years. And Laura ended up getting out of the hospital. She ended up going to Loyola, Chicago, where she met me. And her mom was crying that night that I found her on the couch because she felt guilty because Laura passed 20 years after.
Wow.
Laura passed when she was 33. And that's obviously I sat with her mom and I held her and we talked, and I, don't feel guilty about any of that. But later that night, I started thinking like I should never have met her. Like every memory that I have of her was a gift. And it was at that point where I stopped feeling robbed of the life we had and we're going to build, and started to get thankful for the time we shared together. And it was just a pivotal point in my grieving process that really helped me shape my perspective going forward.
I mean, that's remarkable. And do you find it, I don't want to say all, I want to say all lightly, but a big chunk of everything you've gone through and the way you navigate through this journey as perception and perspective?
I think perspective is everything. Like, sometimes you have to convince yourself that things are going to be okay. Even when your house is on fire, like it just, not every day. Like if I come off at all, like dropping all this positive vibes and feelings. That's a lie. Like I don't want to feel like that, because grief is in the like these silent moments in between these major events. And that's what most people don't see. It's a lot like the cancer journey. You know, when someone gets cancer, they immediately start a caring bridge where everybody can stay up to date on doctor's visits and scans and nutrition and how you're feeling. And so from the outside world, people think that's the cancer journey, but the cancer journey is in between those major events. It's in the quiet moments, it's in the doubt, it's in the loneliness. I mean, I remember for some odd reason when Laura passed away, I laid in my bed and I'm like, the bed feels uneven. Like we spent 15 years in this. And so I started laying across the bed just to change it up. So I put my head on her side and laid the other way with the headboard running parallel to me. And I did that for a year. So, I mean, the amount of crazy shit I have done and done it unknowingly, it's massive.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you moved. You tried
Yeah.
things. You tried things, and this worked, that worked. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing, and it's just, yeah, it's a good point in regards to that quote unquote toxic positivity. I think people misinterpret that when I
Yes.
do post just clips, and people assume the whole conversation is that, and it's yeah, I understand toxic positivity, but it's a practice in a sense, and just because you're saying that doesn't mean you feel that way. It is tricking yourself in a way, and I think over time, just like going to the gym, something does click because it forces your brain to look at a different outcome. It forces your brain to see things a little differently. Till all of a sudden, it's like 6 months later, you have a six pack at the gym. It's kind of
Right.
it is forcing it, but it doesn't mean when you say it, you have to believe it right away, or it doesn't mean you're supposed to feel better all of a sudden. That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
No.
But I think it's also profound outside of that. There's that the grief is in the in between, because I wrote something recently along the lines of even like in the immediate aftermath, we go to a funeral, we think that's the grief, and it is in many ways, of course, but it's when the flowers stop coming and the food stops coming, and all of a sudden you're sitting there
Yes.
by yourself. It's like that's the real moment. That's the real shit. Yeah, when you're lying in bed and someone, your wife or friend, used to make eggs a certain way, and then all of a sudden 6 months later you're at a diner and they say, "How do you want your eggs?" And all of a sudden, holy shit, now I can't get the eggs the same way. As silly as that example is, like there's little micro losses that show up later, and there's
Yes. A
in
micro loss is a great word. I've never heard that before, but that hits it on the head. The when Laura passed in home hospice, so she was in our bedroom, and it was such a beautiful night. She was in a lot of pain. She was surrounded by a lot of loved ones. So in that moment, I felt so relieved for her that the pain was done. And that night, we all had drinks. We all talked about her. It was beautiful. The next, like the whole entire next year, like wasn't even the worst of the grief, for, at least for me, and everybody's is so different and it's so odd, but because that year I still felt so close to her and she still felt incredibly alive to me. And even though I had such a amazing community and support around me, um it's like it was almost like coming down off a crazy high an adrenaline rush over the last 2 years trying to fight cancer and fight for life. But year two for me, year two, year three were particularly challenging. We had, COVID hit. I felt just incredibly alone. Couldn't meet friends. Couldn't date. Was really shut off from everything, and that's when grief really hit me. Where it was like, no, this is your forever now. Like the next person that I meet, they're not going to get the inside jokes. They're not going to smell like her. They're not, when they touch me, I'm going to flinch like I'm having an affair. I'm going to have to relearn and unlearn at the same exact time. And it is a mind fuck. to to do that. It's really really tough. And meanwhile, it's like, it's COVID. My son's school would just open and close. And so I actually started a daycare in my basement, hired a teacher. I had kids down there, mom's coming in the basement, social distancing, all this crazy stuff just to make sense, because I know that that's what she would have done. She would have done that same exact thing. And so, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I feel for everybody who is in those early stages of grief. And when people tell you that it's going to be okay, like nobody wants to hear that. I didn't want to hear that because I immediately assumed that okay was going to be feeling the same as I did before she left. And that's not possible. Okay is the way that I define it, at least, is just coming to terms with your new normal in the healthiest way possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's that there's key words that you said. It's unlearning, which is synonymous at the same time or simultaneous with learning, with relearning.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult part because unlearning is removing everything that you've pretty much based your life on for so long. And it's scary because it's starting over.
Yeah, it's starting over, and in many ways, like the lessons I learned, the things that she taught me, um in some strange way I felt like they belonged to her. And I didn't want to share it early on with anybody else. It's like, especially when dating again, that's really what I'm referring to. When I started dating again, it wasn't, it was actually probably about 6 months after Laura passed. This often gets confused for people about moving on quick. What I got, I was sitting on the couch and I basically was thinking, one day I'm going to start dating again. Like, I know that for sure. I found love. I want love. I want a whole family for James. Like, James will grow up. I don't want to be alone. So I know that this is going to happen. And while I was sitting on the couch, we do this. We create all these hypotheticals about getting the strength to take that first step. How awkward is it going to be? Is the person that I'm meeting on this first Bumble date going to be my new wife? And now she's moving in with me. How do I explain it to James? Convincing myself all these reasons why not to do it. But that year, I went on 10 first dates. And I was very clear. If you went on my Bumble profile, you would laugh because it was like bio, like recently widowed dad looking to get back on his feet. Like, if that's not like come and get your catch, ladies, I don't know what is. Like, this guy comes with baggage, but he will pay for dinner. So, come and meet me on Tuesday. Um, and so I went on these 10 first dates because each date taught me something. It was like I had conversations with people that were grieving in their own way, not from the loss of something, or I should say, not from the loss of somebody, but a loss of a version of them that they thought they would be when they were younger, like married by 38, um not divorced, have their dream job, they wouldn't have given up on their dream. All these like different types of grief we do simultaneously. The first date I went on, I honestly thought like Chris Hansen was going to jump out with a camera, be like, what are you doing with this 6 pack of Mike's Hard Lemonade? You know what you're doing. I'm like, dear God, like, like, is anybody watching here? Because I feel like I'm having an affair. Um, but the conversation went great. She just got a divorce. She was mourning that. None of us were ready. And then the second date, it was with this girl that was clearly a pathological liar
Oh, shit.
about everything. She told me her name was like one thing, and then she had a name tag. It was something else. When I talked to her about it, she was all over the board. So
Name
that
tag.
reminded, yeah, because she was like a nurse or something.
Oh, shit.
And
Okay.
so she had like a name tag on from like the hospital. I mean, I'm in Akron, buddy. People wear name tags everywhere.
I thought it was like speed dating. Okay, that's even weirder in a
Yeah,
way.
no, at the Hilton.
Yeah.
Um, but that that taught me like, hey, you have to remember that like not everybody is going to be telling the truth all the time. Like, be on your guard. Not everybody's your wife. Like, you have to unlearn that stuff and put some guards back on. And so those 10 first dates, they like taught me so much, and with each one it got more and more comfortable. And that was what I was trying to do, was not find somebody. I wasn't even looking to hook up. I couldn't even do that. It was just to get a better grasp of my reality without sitting on my couch creating these hypotheticals that were crippling, thinking that that first step was much harder than it actually was.
I'm kind of comparing this. It's not apples to apples at all, but I remember when maybe like over a year after I reconnected with my ex, and we ended up getting together, and I was questioning it for a while. I was kept pushing that off, and my intentions going into it wasn't to try to rekindle anything. It wasn't even to try to see if I felt this, or actually no, it was to see if I felt this or that. It was almost a test to myself to kind of audit my reality in a sense of let's see. I want to see if anything, what comes up. I want to see not
Yeah,
only have I grown, just I want to put myself in an uncomfortable situation just to see kind of what you were saying, what I will learn.
that's it.
And that's I again, not apples to apples at all, but it was an experience of I want to see what comes up. I want to see where I'm at, almost like a checkpoint to see how I'm feeling. And then for me in this example, it was, oh, I don't feel the same way I did. Every about her in many ways. I don't feel the same anxiety or triggers or emotional blow ups, if you will, from just sitting across from someone I loved. And I was like, it was freeing in a sense. I was uncomfortable at first, but then I learned about my processing. I learned about where I was at right now, regardless if it was too late or too soon. And those are just words that other people create. There's no too late or too soon, in my opinion. It's just an
Right.
experience.
I agree.
So it was kind of, that's how I'm seeing how your experience was without defining it for you. But
It's like collect real world data.
yes.
Don't, like, go out there, do a little field study, see where you're at. And if you come back and you're like, wow, it's scary out there, maybe pull back. But at
Mhm.
least you're not sitting on your couch creating and making this situation worse than it actually is. And that's only when the time feels right. But in my opinion, and for me personally, the time was never right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, it was never right. If I would have gone with what was comfortable for me, I'd still be on the couch. I'd still be lighting candles and being in my sadness. And that sadness I still carry in my day-to-day life. There's always that hole that can't be filled. But like, if people are waiting until they feel 100%, like, you're going to be waiting forever. You have to dive into that uncomfortable spot, that first step. And as uncomfortable as it actually is, which it is, um, it's progress.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think,
and
oh,
and
sorry.
be proud of that. No, and people should just be proud of that. No expectations. Just it's uncomfortable, and you can be proud of yourself without without thinking that you've got everything figured out. It's okay to fall, it's okay to fail, it's okay to mess up. Take the pressure off yourself. You're healing, and
Yeah.
you're allowed to not be okay, and while not being okay, still want happiness.
100%. I think, it's a very important point that you made in regards to there's no perfect time. It is just jumping into the deep end in many ways, but there is, without butchering the word perfect, there is a moment of just kind of, again, trusting the natural flow, as we've said a million times already. And there is kind of a quote unquote perfect moment where you just kind of trust your intuition and trust yourself. It's like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
go for this today. And you may not feel like you're ready, but just trust that intuition when you feel like you want to take that jump. And in regards to filling the hole, I wonder if it's less about filling the hole as it is digging a new hole, and that other hole will still exist during this process. It's not about filling that up because we're going to feel like trying to replace something that isn't with us no more. But it's kind of that hole is always going to exist,
It's
but
always there.
it's digging a new hole in many ways and creating another chapter.
Yeah, exactly. There's this like Japanese legend. I don't know why, but I was just so thankful that like social media existed years after Laura passed, because I felt like my entire page was just littered by all the stoics and all of these like one-liners. And there was this story about a tree. And if you look out at a tree, and right now it's fall here, and in the summertime it's fully green, and in the fall time it starts to change color, which is actually their most beautiful state. Winter hits and they lose all their leaves. They don't have nuts for animals to eat, or they don't provide shade. They don't do anything. Like, the tree actually loses everything, but the tree knows that it's still a tree because it's been through these seasons of life before. And so a lot of times I've seen, just through conversations with other widowers and widows, that they no longer feel like themselves because they've lost. One day the seasons will change, and you'll realize that you were always a tree.
That's beautiful, and it kind of goes back to the idea of our foundation of who we were is always there, but we grow new leaves and we move through these seasons, and it's going to change, and
Yeah.
the change
In
is
in a whole
change is
new
scary
way.
in a whole new way. I mean, and back to the analogy of the seasons. Yeah, like every winter's not the same. Every summer's not the same. Some summers are hot as shit. Some are cooler. Some
Yeah.
winters have snow. Some don't. So it's like, even though they're the same seasons, every season is different. And I think it's embracing the idea of change and impermanence, which is a big part of this podcast. Is that I feel like we're always constantly attaching ourselves to things, and with a closed fist. And I mean that we're always hanging on to things so tightly because we love so much, we love so hard, and it makes sense to like want to squeeze. But it's kind of like an open palm theory for me, where it's I allow things to land in my palm and be in my palm, so I'm still attached to it in a way. But when things change and things fall out of my palm, keep the palm open in many senses. It's this mantra of allowing things to come and go, even when we don't want things to go. And life doesn't dictate that in many ways. We have no choice most of the time, but it's important to kind of keep that open palm as we navigate through these seasons.
Yeah,
Did I
hold
lose
on a
you?
second. Yeah. All right, I'm back. I'm back.
Yeah,
Can
yeah, I
I
think
missed?
I kept talking just in case you came back, but it was long story. I think that was a sign from the universe saying, "David, shut the fuck up. This is not a good story
No,
for you to tell this
I
time."
wish that happened to me more often, because I just like got ADD and I'm just like, nah. Um,
Here I am thinking I'm saying something so profound. The internet's like, "No, shut up. This isn't good. Edit this
yeah,
part out."
the universe said you've had enough here. Yeah,
No,
but
but
I
what?
mean, I think the seasons of life are, it's so important to, like, in going back to perspective. It's really about perspective. Go back to a younger version of yourself when you felt lost. We have all felt lost. We have all felt hopeless. We have all felt like we have are less than, and all of those things. Um, those seasons, they they pass, and it doesn't mean they go away. It's circular. One season of life I've never experienced is what it feels like to have my son move in with his future wife, and me no longer playing the father role that I am now. I'll always be a dad, but I will mourn that part. Like, you ever go through a uh like senior living home, elderly facility, and you look into all these rooms, and they're people that are just sitting there looking at the TV. Each one of these people lived extraordinary lives. They were important at work, they were important to somebody. And now they wish that their phone would just ring, that they would get someone to visit them. That is a season I'm have no experience about. But there's a mourning and grief process to that as well. And I guarantee you, the as much as I wanted to wish away some of the darkest days of my grief, once I get thrown into one of those homes, I would give anything to be able to go back to even the darkest days of my life. So it's like, don't wish away the things you know you're going to miss one day. And that's really the perspective. Don't hurry yourself through the season. Be present with it and allow it to teach you what it's supposed to teach you. Take it all in. Like you said, document it, make note of it. Because you're going to want to be able to reflect back when you're older about a life that you lived. And this is sadly for probably many of your listeners and us, it's a part of our story. And what we do now with it is up to us.
That's beautiful. And I think it's important also, like I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm a little psychotic, where when things have happened in my life in the heat of it, I'm not obsessing about what the lesson is, but I try to find myself so present that sometimes I do find the lesson immediately. I know what's coming, but it's not about immediately like, oh, what am I going to learn from this horrible experience? And I think it's more just, saying it once and allowing it to fly away. And it's like, this, and it's a perspective shift of positivity, but not being positive in a horrible moment. But it's also like, this is gonna come back to me sometime in the future. I'm gonna be able to use this, and it's gonna teach me something. I don't know what it is right now. I don't have to know what it is right now. I can just feel like shit, yada yada. But there is planting a small seed. It's planting a small seed.
You can do all those things. And again, like what I'm trying to put out there is not toxic positivity. I know for a fact all of us are going to get older, hopefully. And I know we're going to want to be younger. Like those are absolutes. So knowing that, like these difficult parts of your life, take them in, feel all the feels. You're allowed to cry. I mean, my God, I've had the darkest days in the world. A friend of mine just lost his wife, and I was on the phone with him yesterday because once you're in this cancer world, you're kind of in it forever. You're either a client or a mentor for the rest of your life, and so he called me. His wife passed away about 3 weeks ago, and I had to catch myself because I started talking to him like 6 years removed, and he is 3 weeks removed. And I stopped myself real quick because I felt like I was going down that path. And then I just sat there and just listened to him and tried to transport back to those early days. So he felt heard. It wasn't about solving his problems like I wanted to do. I wanted to tell him that one day you're going to feel okay. He didn't want to hear that, and I didn't either. So it's funny that even after experiencing grief as long as I have, even talking about it as long as I have, I still sometimes find myself falling into those cliches that I hated hearing when I was really going through it. And sometimes the best way to help somebody is to just show up and be quiet and let them go through all of their emotions.
Yes. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish in people that maybe 3 weeks in right now, and they'll explaining your story in a linear way so they get a taste of where you're at. Maybe they could find some camaraderie in that. And then also just witness, the growth that you've had and the growth that you'll continue to have, I'm sure. Just to, without saying it's going to be okay, they can just witness a story like yours and be like, okay, he's 6 years down the road, me and with a totally different experience. I'm 25 years down there. Look where they're at. I'm not saying I'm in the perfect fucking place. I still have my shit to work out, but it's like, okay, that just that just represents some sort of growth. So it's not about being like, I can get where they're at. It's just witnessing the possibility. And I feel like just
Yeah.
understanding the possibility of movement through our experience can carry a significant weight and not put the pressure on, I got to be there now. It's just like, it could just a little nod, like, okay, there are people out there that have felt different than what I may feel right now. Noted. And I can still return back to where I'm at right now, just with the glimmer of hope that that
Oh,
does exist. And hope, people think it's dangerous. I think it's powerful, and it's not latching onto it in a aggressive manner, but it's just witnessing the possibilities and not forgetting that it is possible. And it's not
yeah.
saying in a toxic way, I will get this, I will be better. It's just like, maybe I can. And then it leaves a window on which direction you want to go on.
Hope is such a powerful drug. I mean, it is what got us through cancer. It's what brought Laura and I closer during the darkest times of our life. It's what I clung to even when I didn't believe it fully. We all have to believe that if we do this, then it's going to get better. And or else why do anything at all?
Right.
You know? Like, and it's not two things. This is one of the biggest lessons that I've ever learned in grief is that things are not black and white. We live in this black and white world where it's either this or this. And it's like, no, we live in a very gray world where almost everything, thing that I have gone through, two things exist at the same exact time. I'm happy and I'm sad. I'm excited and I'm scared. I am, motivated and I just want to stay home. And like all of these things, it's okay for them to feel conflicting because grief is confusing. But I'm okay with that. And it was uncomfortable for me to deal with those emotions early on because I wanted absolutes. I wanted to rush to the end and get there. I was tired of treading water forever. I was exhausted. I mean, for 3 years after Laura passed, I got like 3 hours of sleep a night. I was in bad shape and really, really banged up. But, I was able to survive that storm. And anybody that's listening to your podcast, they're tuning in because they deep down, whether or not they'll admit it or not, they're listening because one, they want they want to feel like they're not alone, but also they want to hear something that gives them hope that it is going to be okay, even if it won't come out their mouth. That's what we're all yearning for. And one day, I hope everybody finds that, and you will. You gotta withstand the seasons, and the seasons are tough, man. They're tough,
They
brutal.
suck. They suck, but
They suck.
it's okay. It's like this just sucks, and you couldn't have said it any better than I could have explained it. And I want to mic drop it on that. And I would love to. I feel like we can talk for a very long time. And
Yeah.
I would love to. I think I want to call this an appetizer to hopefully talking again in person when we can make this happen. Maybe I'll friggin' find a studio in Akron and come your way. And
Hey man, I'll be out. I'll be out your way. We just got to plan the dates right. But I so appreciate the conversation and love the mission that you're putting out there. You clearly have done your work, and it still shows that even when you do all your homework, when you live in the grief world, it still gets confusing.
it's
You know,
confusing almost the whole way.
yeah, and that's okay.
100%. And dude, I appreciate your expression, your vulnerability. Again, represents a topic and a conversation that I think can be poked out a little bit more between men, and also this conversation can help fathers. It can help women understand even more. So I think it covers a wide range, even within a specific experience. And I think that's the beauty of it
Yeah,
all. I commend you on your journey. I commend you for sharing
thank
this
you.
with people in a public way for something so personal, even though I know you've been in the public light. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity. This is only the beginning for us, hopefully, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Hey, you too. Thanks, David.
All right, thank you all for listening, and I will, if anyone wants to find him, Mike on Mike. You prefer Mike or Michael, by the way?
It really doesn't matter. I mean, on Instagram, it's Michael Allio L4. Yeah, so you can check me out on there.
All right,
People
cool.
ask me
Yeah,
that. Michael
Mike,
Michael sounds really professional, but nobody really calls me that. But either way,
I'll call you Mickey just to throw a bundle in this for no reason
there
at
we
all.
go.
So, you can find out. I'll put your info in the show notes for anyone that wants to find you as usual. And I appreciate you all for joining the show. That was a wonderful conversation. Thank you again. Until next time, y'all. See you next time.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.